We'll get going here in a second, Nick. I've hit the live button. Everybody will be jumping in. Graphics team does a good job, I got to say. Live button. Getting the back chatter. Okay, get rid of that. Okay. All right.
We'll see how quiet the airport is. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, everybody. This is Keith Niebuhr with Gators Online, joined by, look, I'm just the helping hand here. We're joined by the superstar team reporter, Nick Torre. He's in, not Lexington, but at the Cincinnati airport because it's easier to get back to Florida from Cincinnati, I guess. Nick's covered the team for a decade, and I think even he was a little, I don't know, caught off guard. I don't know is that the right word, Nick? Yesterday was kind of one of those games where I think everybody went in with some optimism, and well, you didn't. You picked Florida to lose, but you picked it to be a competitive game, and I think that's more than anything. I think if fans look and they say, "Look, I want my team to win every week," but man, by God, I want them to be competitive. I want them to be competitive, and was Florida competitive yesterday? It was 16-0 in the first quarter, 23-0 with just about 9 minutes left in the second quarter. Fell behind by 23 again in the third quarter, and got a touchdown. Whatever. Wasn't pretty, Nick.
No, really bad first quarter. Dig yourself into a hole, but you go into halftime 27-3. If you score,
actually, I think it was 23-7 at halftime.
23-7. Sorry, yeah, I'm a little dyslexic there. 23-7.
That's all right. I think everybody's a little discombobulated right now.
Yeah, if you hold Kentucky to no points and score, now it's 14-23. I said that right away. I was like, hey, Florida can get back in this game. As non-competitive as it was, Florida can get back in this game right now with a stop and score, and Kentucky goes down the field and scores right away. So that was thrown out of the window. I think there are some plays that kind of turned the tide. I think it was 3-0. Kentucky throws a little screen to Ray Davis, and Scooby Williams misses a tackle. Miguel Mitchell misses a tackle. Jalen Kimber tries to tackle Ray Davis and gets pushed into the end zone. Now it's instead of 6-0, now it's 10-0. I think the biggest problem in my mind was Florida tried to play, and Billy Napier wants to be. He said it in his opening press conference. He said after the game yesterday, if you know me, this one really hurts. This one really stings because of the way that we lost. They want to be a physical team. Kentucky, Mark Stoops has had that identity for 11 years now in his 11th season. They recruit to that identity. They develop to that identity. They play to that identity. Billy Napier wants to be that. You weren't going to beat Kentucky by playing Kentucky football, and they tried to do that yesterday. That's what Billy Napier looks at Mark Stoops and goes, that's the kind of identity I want to have. I don't know that fans want that identity of Florida. I don't think that fans want to be that kind of team. And if you look at the teams that dominated Kentucky, it was using what you had in your backyard in recruiting. Speed, not just speed at running back, tight end, receiver, but linebacker, safety, corner. So Billy Napier looked to me at Kentucky, and that's the kind of style of football, brand of football he wants to play. And it hurt him because he got beat by a team that's doing what he wants to do better than he can right now.
Well, that's what Billy Napier wants to do most games. That's who Billy Napier is.
Yep.
And you knew that when you hired him. And, that's the dealio, as they say. Look, Nick, there were a lot of disturbing statistics from yesterday. I'm going to get you to – and trends, and I'm going to get you to we're going to go over a lot of things here. But I'm going to get you to tell me what really stood out to you. Here's one. Kentucky, 329 yards rushing.
Yeah.
Florida, 69 yards rushing. So now Florida's played 3 Power 5 teams, and in 2 of them, Nick, didn't get over 70 yards rushing. Okay? Disturbing trend. So you're losing at the point of attack. You're losing on the line of scrimmage against quality teams, 2 out of the 3 you've played. 10 penalties, 86 yards. Now, you could say that last penalty, the false start on Florida, probably shouldn't have been called. That still leaves you with 9 penalties for 81 yards. Disturbing. More miscues, malfunctions on the road. The road woes. Slow starts on the road again. 0-2 on the road this year, and only 1 win away from home now in the last 2 years. And I guess the last one, Nick, another special teams woe, another special teams miscue, and a significant one at that. And so when you come out of this game, if you're Florida, there really wasn't much to hang your hat on. Let's be honest. I think there was a lot more. I think this, Nick, is more disturbing if you're in Florida than the loss at Utah, because that was the first game of the season. That's an experienced team. And I know they were missing guys, but you really did shoot yourself in the foot in that game. It could have been a competitive game had you not shot yourself in the foot. I don't know that Florida didn't just shoot itself in the foot yesterday. They got beat up at the line of scrimmage.
And we did both. 10 penalties. So
Well, no. I got you. No, I'm saying, but 329 yards rushing for the other team.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a team that's the blueprint for success is about physicality and winning at the line of scrimmage and being tough and all that stuff. And 329 yards is 329 yards. You know, I went back and looked at some of the top rushing games, Nick, by opposing teams against Florida all time. And that almost made the top 10. That was getting close. I mean, you know, in the first half, you're thinking they're going to make it. And who were the teams that had those big rushing days against Florida? Well, one of them was 1979, Alabama. I think they won the national title that year. Florida didn't win a game. Okay, so there's a little discrepancy there, okay? These are the types of games you don't expect to see that kind of discrepancy. Kentucky had 260 more rushing yards than Florida. For me, Nick, that's probably the most disappointing thing because I don't know that that's correctable. Whereas I looked at the Utah game and I thought, you know, some of this is correctable. A lot of this is correctable. So that to me is probably the biggest question mark coming out of this game. Now we sort of have a bigger sample size of who they are, and they've been kind of beat up on the line of scrimmage in 2 of the 3 big games they played, Nick.
Yeah, and I said it. I didn't know how much Kingsley coming back would benefit Florida. There was a time last year where Kingsley was playing specifically on the road, and fans wanted Jake Slaughter to start over him. I think he does bring leadership to that group. I think he does. He is kind of the alpha in that room, but he is what he is, and he's playing hurt now. So Florida got no push in the running game. Conversely, the holes that Kentucky's offensive line were able to open, you know, I think we talked about how good Florida's linebackers have been this year, and a lot of that was that the defensive line was playing well and keeping them clean, letting the linebackers run, flow in space, and make plays. Yesterday, that just wasn't the case, and Ray Davis had a day against Florida last year when he was at Vanderbilt. Certainly a better one yesterday, but Florida's offensive line didn't get pushed. They just got beat on both lines of scrimmage. And I kind of saw that coming and talked about that. Like, that's who Kentucky is. That's what they are. Florida's not there yet. That's Billy Napier wants to get them there, but they're not there yet. So the big thing for me too is just more procedural issues. And now where's your confidence level in Florida going on the road and winning? I thought, and I picked all year that Florida would beat South Carolina. I don't have any confidence that Florida will go into Williams-Brice Stadium and beat South Carolina now. You're muted.
Nick, I cut you off. So I thought I did. I was muted. I cut you off a little earlier. I don't even know if I let you answer. And I'm sick right now. I apologize to everybody who's dealing with a little cold type thing here. Did you ever answer what the most disturbing thing was? I don't remember. There's a lot to digest. In a nutshell, could you pick one?
I think 19 missed tackles. Florida's been really good in terms of that. I think that was that was disturbing. The most disturbing thing to me was just the game plan. Like, you have to be real with yourself. And I understand if you want to be that, if you want to be Kentucky, if you want to be that bully, cool, I get that. But you've got to be real with yourself. You're not there yet. And to go into a game plan trying to, out Kentucky, that it was not going to happen. Yeah. So to me, if that was your game plan, you felt good about that this week, then you started from a negative standpoint because you weren't going to out Kentucky or beat Kentucky in the way that you tried to on Saturday.
If I would have told you going into the game, we discussed this last night, that Devin Leary, the NC State QB transfer, that he would go 9 of 19 for 69 yards.
Nice.
You would have probably thought, oh, man, they got him. They didn't have to, they didn't have to pass.
Yeah, I'm surprised that I thought you would need to force some turnovers. Leary had been turnover prone, fumbles, interceptions, you name it. He enjoyed giving other teams the football. Florida only had one. Thought this is a big thing. This is if Florida's just the margin of error right now. Florida just has to not. They can't beat themselves and beat other teams. Florida's not going to win. I said this. Florida's not going to win the game if they lose the turnover battle, lost the turnover battle. Florida's not going to win the game if they shoot themselves in the foot and have procedural penalties, a bunch of penalties. You mentioned the one on special teams. That was a 3-and-out. Florida's defense, which was struggling, forced a 3-and-out. You get a leaping penalty, which Billy Napier says they showed a cut up of Florida doing it and it not getting called and saying, we can't do this. You can't have this. They worked on it all week. You can't do this. And then you do it, and the next play goes 75 yards for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Florida's not good enough to beat themselves and still beat a team that they're on the field with. And Saturday was penalties, procedural, and, offsides, holding, things like that. But it was also just a bad game plan. And then you mix in getting bullied on each line of scrimmage and 19 missed tackles. The score could have been worse, maybe.
Yeah. I'm just not – I don't know enough about football to criticize game plans too much. That's just me. I know Florida beat themselves with the penalties and the missed tackles, but I'm not sure missed tackle is beating yourself. I think that's kind of who you are more than reflective of, gosh, we normally make these tackles. Well, they don't normally make those tackles, as far as I can tell. But here's an interesting stat now. Another one, Nick. Graham Mertz, 25 of 30, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. The interception really wasn't his fault. Bobbled up in the air. Of course, there looked like 9 defensive backs around the receiver who he threw it
Kentucky dropped their nose tackle into coverage on that play. They're 6'6", 348-pound nose tackle.
And I've been on the Graham Mertz bus this year, and I kind of jumped off of it a little bit yesterday. I'm going to tell you why, Nick. Those were hollow yards. Kind of like what his hollow yards were at Utah. Get behind big, complete a lot of passes that didn't mean a whole hell of a lot. And then, by the way, you still got to complete them. He still had to make the throws. This isn't an indictment on Graham Mertz. I mean, he's not playing terribly at all, and he played fantastic against Tennessee. But Florida had 44 yards in the first quarter, Nick. He missed a wide open receiver when they were down 3-0. That would have been a touchdown. That would have given him a 7-3 lead. He missed another open receiver, I believe, on a crossing route that would have been a first down. He didn't make the plays. Now, granted, he had 5 incompletions the whole game, and one of them was a bobbled pass that was intercepted. I get that. But you needed more of him yesterday early in the game to soften Kentucky up to be able to run the ball. And so all these passing yards, again, Florida had 44 yards in the first half and ended up with 315 or so for the game. So these were, you're already down 13 or 16-0, then 23-0. Didn't mean a whole lot. They weren't in the game. They got it to 30-14, and you're thinking, okay, it's a 2-score game. Did anybody watching think that they were going to come back and win that game? But again, to me, the biggest issue, and Jesse Palmer, former Florida quarterback who was doing the game on TV yesterday, he said it coming out of halftime. Florida's losing the battle at the line of scrimmage, Nick, on both sides of the ball. Now, that's still a coaching thing. You're still in charge, right? It's your team, okay? If you have players or don't have players, you're still in charge, right? And I don't think they got the dudes right now to be – do they have the dudes to beat Kentucky? Yeah, 3 or 4 times out of 10 up there. But they really weren't competitive yesterday. And I think it all started – forget about all the miscues. They hurt. Don't get me wrong. They hurt. But to me, it all started up front. And the offensive line didn't that wasn't a surprise. Look, they haven't been great all year. But the defensive line really struggled yesterday, Nick, at times. And that was a little bit of I think that's maybe more concerning. It feels like Florida had sort of learned to live with what they had on the offensive line. But the defensive line really was, I don't want to say manhandled. But again, Ray Davis had 280 yards. I mean, I'm not sure. Did Herschel ever have 280 yards against Florida? I don't believe he did. Okay.
No, he ran for
Bo Jackson had one big game in 4 tries against Florida. That's it. He got over 100 yards one time. Okay.
Yeah,
they had over 200.
The second most yards ever allowed by Florida defense.
I mean, really? all the great backs they've played through the years, all the great backs, Heisman winners, Herschel Walker 3 times, Bo Jackson 4 times.
Yeah, well, I mean, the book on how to beat Florida is out. Utah showed it. Kentucky showed it again. Going back to Wisconsin, when Graham Mertz throws 30 or more times, he threw 30 passes against Kentucky. His teams are 0-12. I like Graham. I'm more high on Graham now than I was in the spring or in the fall or before the season.
Yeah, and I'm not taking shots at him. I want to be clear on that.
I just have a different perspective. I've always said Graham is not going to win you games. He's not going to lose you games the way he's playing. He's going to manage the game. I think he's managing what is being asked of him very well. I plan on asking Billy Napier tomorrow if Graham is allowed to check at the line of scrimmage. I see a lot of plays where Florida will run into an 8-man box or 9-man box. And it's like, okay, well, I think Graham is smart enough. Graham watches as much film maybe as the coaching staff does. I think Graham would know to get out of that play if that was an option. So I want to hear Billy Napier say yes or no. Does Graham have the option to check in and out of plays if he thinks it's a bad play on the field? That's the game plan, though. If you can – I don't understand why teams in Kentucky did it yesterday. I don't understand why teams defer when they win the toss against Florida, because Florida's not built to come from behind. And Florida's 1-4 against the coin this year. A funny stat, but I think tracking the coin wins and losses is funny. But only one time has Florida started on defense this year. If I'm especially like Tennessee, Josh Heupel won the toss and deferred. And I'm like, what are you doing? You've got this high-powered offense. Go out there and score right away and make Florida chase you all game. I think if teams are seeing if we can stop Florida's running attack and make Graham Mertz beat us with his arm, Florida's not there yet. They don't have the skill position guys, and you lose another one in Caleb Douglas, who I think is going to be a great player. I was talking to a guy who covered him back when he was in high school in Houston, who was asking me about his health status. Florida just doesn't have the talent right now to throw the ball around the yard, score quickly. They don't try to run plays quickly. They don't score quickly. Outside of Trevor Etienne's one huge run against Tennessee, it's a slow, plodding, methodical offense that's not built to come from behind. And I don't know why teams would try to do anything else than, hey, we need to sell out against the run.
Yeah.
If Graham Mertz beats us with his arm, that's fine. But Graham Mertz completed his last 19 passes in a row yesterday. Graham Mertz has not been the reason Florida has lost either of the games they've lost.
Well, I know they want him and need him to be a game manager, but they also needed him to make more plays in the first quarter and a half of the loss at Utah and the loss of Kentucky. Nick, he's got to elevate the team a little bit too now. He can't just be a guy out there, Yeah, I get it. I understand.
I'm not going to ask my cat to be a dog. I'm not going to ask my dog to be a cat.
He's the starting quarterback.
I think what they're asking of him is what he's capable of, and he's playing better than I thought he would. So, I've got nothing bad to say about Graham. It's just this is what he is. I think he's playing to his skill level, to his talent.
You're going on the road, and you've got to make plays, and you miss a wide open touchdown. Jason Marshall missed the pick six. I mean, so it was really a confluence of events yesterday, quite frankly. I mean,
he missed a big pass, overthrew a guy. There's some plays where he's missing, and maybe he's going through his progressions, and by the time he's looked away, a guy's open, and now we're yelling, "You're missing an open guy." And it's his progression took him away, and now he doesn't see that this guy has now gotten open. And there's some anticipation to that, but we also don't know what the play calls are.
Yeah,
and what way he's going through.
That's
things.
true. And I want to be perfectly clear. I think he's played fairly well this year. Okay, I've been on his on the Graham Mertz bus or train or whatever. I just feel like, okay, now they played 3 good teams, and against Tennessee he made the plays, but early when the game was on the line. And the other 2 games he really didn't make the plays when the game was on the line. Now, so here's another question, Nick. So many people are just laying into Florida's play calling, and I'm just a reporter. Okay, I didn't play pro college football. I've seen a lot of bad football. I've seen a lot of good football. A good play is one where you score on. Sometimes that same play doesn't work against a different defense, or if a guy doesn't fall down or whatever. I get all that. So my question is, one of the reasons I'm hesitant to really criticize the play call, everybody's going to jump my, here, but is because I look at the personnel and I'm thinking they must know something. They must know what they have up front. You can't throw deep all the time. But again, that was an open man against Kentucky early in the game. But you can't throw deep a lot because, quite frankly, your receivers are not going to have time to make double moves in the SEC, which is the only way you're going to get open downfield if your offensive line can't hold guys for more than a second and a half, right? Okay, So that's an issue. Your best receiver is Ricky Pearsall. Other than that, your best guys are young guys. Whatever. Your running game, you've got one really strong running back and another one that's not bad. But you don't have this – it's not just a wealth of talent on the offense. On the offensive line, I'm not sure I'm not – of the starting five, I'm not sure any of those guys are surefire NFL players. So my question is, how much of it's play calling, Nick, and how much of it is they've got to go slow, they've got to be methodical because of what they have. You know what I mean? Like, so that's – I don't know that you can answer that.
I don't know that I have the right answer. I can tell you I've never been inspired by Billy Napier's play calling. I think he will get in his bag at times, and there'll be a drive, 2 drives in a row even, or drives throughout the game where I'm like, that's an awesome design. Hey, they set this up and they ran this play last week and they ran it earlier in the game and it set up something else. And I see glimpses of it, but like, Austin Armstrong gets hired, and we're talking about this is a bright young mind. People think he's going to be great X's and O's play caller. When Billy Napier was hired, it was great culture, detail-oriented, going to recruit his ass off. Nobody's ever said about Billy, this guy's great game planning, great X's and O's, great game managing and changing – tinkering at halftime, things like that. No one's ever said it about him. And I don't know that he was high. Like, you got rid of Dan Mullen, who I think is one of the best, greatest X's and O's game planner, adjusting at halftime, adjusting on the sideline during quarters. And that's one of the reasons why I went with Kentucky. I thought, listen, I watched Mark Stoops coach circles around Dan Mullen, who I think is a better game day coach than Billy Napier. So I don't know that the play calling is all of the problem. You have to execute. Florida's offensive line is not playing well, really well against, I think, Tennessee, but certainly got it handed to him yesterday. That hampers the execution of plays. If you're getting whipped up front and you can't run the football, now you're one-dimensional and you have to throw. Well, now these guys are pinning their ears back, and the offensive line is already struggling.
Yeah,
the plays are being telegraphed because of what the game is, and I think you're missing a huge wrinkle in your offense without having Eugene Wilson.
That's a good point. Good point. Maybe time will tell what kind of an offensive mind Billy is or was. Not maybe. Time definitely will tell. But here's my question. And hey, forgive me, everybody. I'm dealing with a little. I got to make excuses after all because I'm not feeling well. But hey, by the way, before we get going, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, tell Nick how great he is. By the way, Nick is the reason I'm sick right now. Okay, he looks like $1 million. Guy looks like George Clooney walking through the airport right now.
Oh, look at this. We got golden hour here in Cincinnati.
Meanwhile, I'm down here in Tampa. It's 89 degrees, and I was under 6 blankets 20 minutes ago. Okay. But anyway, we digress here. So the question is, you look at this offensive personnel, Nick, and I ask you, Dan Mullen, Steve Spurrier, how many points a game are they scoring with this group?
Well, first off, listen, Dan Mullen wouldn't have recruited this group. The players that are making impact.
I think you could have stopped with Dan Mullen wouldn't have recruited.
Yeah. So, I don't know. So a big thing to me too is Florida's still learning how to win. I watched Auburn and Georgia yesterday, and I'm thinking, man, Auburn's going to pull this off. Georgia is just a veteran football team that knows how to win. They know how to handle adversity. Shamar James yesterday, who's played well all year, says, I think we were a little affected by the early kick time. And I'm thinking, how? How are you affected by the early kickoff time? Like, how is that a thing?
Were they affected by the late kickoff time at Utah? I mean, do they need to be the ones to pick the time that they play? I got to ask. I mean,
Florida's just still learning how to win. They're not there yet. This is a program that hasn't won an SEC championship since Tim Tebow was a junior in college. for the 11 years I've been here, they've won the SEC East a couple times, celebrated that by putting up banners on the wall. They took those down, but like Florida just doesn't know how to win. They don't handle adversity well. These are things that as a program you need to learn, the coaching staff included, and Florida's just not there yet. I don't think they will handle adversity well, and you're going to face a lot of adversity on the road in the SEC.
What was yesterday, though, a team that doesn't just know how to get over that hump yet, or was yesterday a team that
yesterday they just got bullied. They got bullied yesterday, and I think that's why I keep bringing up, the game plan of being like, you're trying to out Kentucky. That's not where you are. I understand that might be what you want to be, but you're not there yet, and I don't like the game plan that you went in thinking that was going to work.
All right, so where do we go from here? Where do the Florida Gators go from here, Nick? They're much different. You talked about Auburn, Georgia. Auburn and Florida are the two teams in the SEC that are completely different at home than they are on the road. Not LSU. It's not South Carolina. No, it's those two. Florida's a different team at home. You'd like to think they could beat Vanderbilt this next week, who hasn't been good at all this season.
Lord,
you'd like to think that. But then you're right back to where you square one again. Another road game. South Carolina is not Kentucky. South Carolina is not Utah. But South Carolina is going to spread the field because their offensive line stinks too. And they're going to probably throw the ball 48 times and cause you some real headaches there. Okay. But where does Florida go from here? What are the signs right now that make you believe they can win these next two games? Because, Nick, if they don't win both of these next two games, I don't see how they're going to have a winning record. Let's just be honest here. Because if you don't, and I mean both of them, at 4-3, if you go 1-1 in these two games, you then have Georgia in Jacksonville. You have LSU at LSU. You have Arkansas at home, Missouri on the road, which I believe Missouri's still unbeaten. Now, they haven't really played too many good people yet.
Missouri's unbeaten.
And then you got FSU
defense in the SEC.
Yeah. So you tell me where all the wins are. They're not going to be favored in too many more of these games. So you got to win these next two to have a winning record. That's progress, right? And by the way, if you win those two games and you go to South Carolina and you win, then you're going to start feeling better about yourself. You're going to realize, hey, we can do this on the road. We can beat somebody. We can be organized and not shoot ourselves in the foot and not be beat up on the line of scrimmage and not make the dumb mistakes over and over again and not be rattled by the crowd. Okay? So that could then serve you well down the road. And then maybe you go to Missouri and win that game. But what do you see if you're Florida right now? I mean, what's the path forward? What do you do? Because they're still searching for an identity. They're still, I don't know. It's just kind of a weird season so far. Nick, 5 games in, what do we really know? What do we really know about who they are, what they're totally capable of? We've seen more bad than we've seen good, quite frankly.
I know that my picks from June that you made me do are 5-0. I drank some Florida Kool-Aid before the Utah game, but
wait. But you did pick yeah. I said did you not pick
when we had to do our projections in like June? I said 7-5, and I'm 5-0 in that projection right now.
Okay,
that is a wild. If you find that graphic,
if you're a Gator fan, what gives you hope? What gives you hope going into these next couple of weeks that better days are coming soon?
Vanderbilt's given up 140, almost 148 yards on the ground a game. You should be able to go home in front of your home crowd. I'll be interested to see what the crowd looks like. It is homecoming. You should get a lot of people back because of homecoming. I hope that it's a good crowd. I had a bunch of fans screaming at me that they're apathetic now. And I said, well, you're screaming, so you're not. So I don't think we've reached the boycott the game, not going to the game kind of thing. So you should get a win against Vanderbilt. You get some good feeling. You go to 2-1 in the SEC. I don't know. South Carolina's allowing 140 yards on the ground. Their offensive line hasn't been great. I don't think Spencer Rattler's great. I have no confidence that Florida will play a clean football game on the road until I see it. I don't think or won't believe that Florida will be a competent football team on the road. You played in front of 58,000 at Utah. You played in front of 61 at LSU. It's over 70. Williams-Brice is bigger and louder than Lexington was. I don't know. I've picked Florida to beat South Carolina all offseason and all year. I've expected them to beat South Carolina. I don't believe in Spencer Rattler. I don't think that they're a great team in Columbia, but I don't think Florida's competent on the road.
Nick, they've got to figure something out. These slow starts on the road have just been absolutely deadly. Just
You can,
God,
you
I'm
can
giving
bet
you
on
no
it.
chance. Giving you no chance. All right. So Chris Sorley, Chris, you went there, didn't you, man? All right. Chris Sorley chiming in. I don't know if you can see it, Nick. What if Florida?
Yeah,
What
shout
if
out to
Florida?
Chris.
Yeah,
Chris is
yeah,
always in here. Shout out to Chris.
yeah. I mean, if you're negative, Nick, Chris is captain negative. No, sergeant first class negativity. No, I'm just kidding with you, Chris. What if Florida drops this game to Vanderbilt? Yeah, I hate to play the what if game, but isn't that what we do all the time anyway? So, okay, what if Florida loses to Vanderbilt? Nick, it could go sideways pretty quick, man.
Yeah, let me pull up. If Florida loses to Vanderbilt, they
I don't
will
think they're
lose
going to
to
lose,
South
by the way. But
Carolina. If Florida loses to Vanderbilt, they will lose to South Carolina. They will lose to Georgia.
LSU.
LSU kind of stinks, but that's away in front of 100,000.
But Nick, what about Arkansas? Arkansas is not that great, but you know what they are? You brought this up a couple weeks ago.
Arkansas is big.
They're
big
physical.
And physical.
They're
and
physical.
Arkansas is big and physical, and the book on Florida, how to beat Florida, is out. If you want to beat Florida, you can punch them in the mouth up front. Can they respond at home? Yeah, they responded to getting punched in the mouth by Tennessee. Tennessee goes down, scores on a huge play, and Florida responded. Florida has not responded at all to being punched in the mouth when they're not in Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. So,
yeah,
does that Arkansas game being at home help? I think so.
Yeah.
But Arkansas has the dudes to run the way that Utah did, and Utah was big up front, and Kentucky's big up front on both lines of scrimmage. So, like, Arkansas has the blueprint and a bunch of the pieces for the blueprint to build a win against Florida at home. But I do like Florida at home.
All right, so Eugene Wilson, the freshman receiver, again, I've been in and out the last few days in a coma, basically. He was listed as a starter on the depth chart, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Did he play yesterday? Did he play at all yesterday?
No. So he tried to go. They tried to have him go, and he wanted to play, campaigned to play. He played or practiced all week. We reported that, I believe, on Thursday, that Eugene Wilson had been practicing. He was limited some. Like, you're not going to have guys thumping him when you have a bruised collarbone. So wanted to go, but like, if it's bruised and the bone's already weak, and if you're using him, you're going to feature him. And if he gets tackled and it breaks, now you're out for 4 to 6 weeks, which would put you out for Georgia. If you give the bone a chance to heal, and if it's not broken and it's just a bruise and that's just a pain tolerance thing, and the kid was telling you he wants to play, it's a huge. Not having him and what he brings to the offense. Like I said before on our show, on me and Zach's show, Eugene Wilson is not just, yes, he can make plays. He frees up Ricky Pearsall. You can't just focus on Ricky Pearsall. The orbits, the jet sweeps, the zone orbits that he's running, that has to be respected. And then that means the running lanes are opening. Florida didn't have running lanes yesterday. Not that they don't respect when Ricky Pearsall is running that, but Florida has it on tape that they will hand that ball or toss it, which gives Graham Mertz those cheap passing yards you were talking about, Keith. So Eugene Wilson, the offense looks completely like the offense that they had when he played against McNeese, and then early on before he got hurt against Tennessee. That looks fun. That looks like, okay, you can be excited about that offense without him, and it's just one player and just a freshman, but he makes Florida's offense much better and much different. You're muted. You're muted, Keith.
I do this all the time. I'm muted. Not criticizing anybody on the staff, just asking questions. Grew up following this program. Grew up in Gainesville. Went to UF. Probably know as much about UF history as anybody my age, right? That doesn't mean anything, by the way. I didn't give an ounce of blood for the program like all my friends that played there. But my question is, okay, so he didn't play. Why was he listed as a starter? I don't understand. I'm just curious. What would be just for simple gamesmanship, simple make the other team think about something? I don't have, that seemed weird. All right, let's get to one recruiting question. Sean asks, do you think this Kentucky loss affects the decisions of Zay Mincy, 4-star cornerback, and LJ McCray, 5-star defensive lineman, both of Daytona Beach, Mainland? And I should point out, LJ McCray visited Auburn yesterday. He's got a Final Five of Auburn, Florida, Florida State, Miami, and Georgia. He's going to officially visit FSU this coming weekend. he was at, and then he'll have a decision. His birthday's October 18th. Look for a commitment probably sometime within a couple weeks after that. At least that's the plan. Things tend to change. Now with LJ McCray, I still think Florida's probably in the driver's seat, but you don't want this season to go sideways. Like I said, they're not looking at one game. One game happens. They know Florida's in rebuild mode. They've told all these recruits that, okay? They've been honest about it. They've told them, hey, rebuild mode, you're going to be the class that helps get Florida to the top. LJ McCray, when he was a sophomore, Daytona Beach Mainland went 5-5. Now it's a team many people think can go deep in the playoffs. So he's comfortable with that. He's told me that specifically. He's told Corey Bender, who works with us at Gators Online, hey, I don't mind being part of a rebuild. Not a big issue there. One loss. The issue becomes if there's a pattern, okay? If the losses start piling up and you're not seeing improvement and you're not seeing that progression as a program. What he said after the Tennessee game, which he attended, was, I'm seeing what they told me I would see. Okay. But if you're 4-6, you're no longer seeing what they told you would see. So just something to keep in mind there. But right now, I like where Florida sits. We'll see. They got to finish it off. Very smart kid. He would play significantly next year, probably 15, 20 snaps a game, I would think, as a true freshman on the D-line. He's a special talent. Got to get stronger, obviously. Zay Mincy, we still think Florida, Miami, Alabama, maybe Florida, Miami there. Corey Bender, who works with us, knows his situation a lot better than I do, and he thinks that Florida is probably the team to beat and has been for some time. But, again, they're not looking at one game. They're looking at multitude of things, patterns, development, how do the DBs look, how do the defensive linemen look, all that. So they don't push the panic button quite like fans do, quite frankly. And, we'll see. It was interesting, Nick. Auburn apparently in the recruiting lounge yesterday had the Florida game on. They wanted it on. They wanted it on TV because they had multiple Florida commitments and targets at that game, including Jamonte Waller, 4-star inside linebacker who was there, LJ McCray who was there, and then the one that Florida really wished he wouldn't have gone. And I know it's apparently been reported elsewhere that Florida was cool with that, but Amir Jackson, the 4-star tight end from Portal, Georgia, Auburn, is making a serious push with him. And he's now visited Auburn this year and has not been to a game at Florida. Something to keep an eye on. I suspect that Florida's going to make sure he gets down to Gainesville really soon. I've been told Florida isn't extremely worried, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on. But anyway, all right, let's get to some more comments here, Nick. Let's see here. Discipline. Man, you're right. There's a lot of issues right now. There's a lot of issues on the road. Nick, how do you – they've now performed poorly at night on the road. They've now performed poorly at noon on the road.
You got 3:30 in Jacksonville. We'll hit trifecta there.
That's what I was saying earlier. I mean, should Florida ask if they get to pick the time? I mean, what does Shamar James, what time would suit him well, I guess is the question. I mean, I don't know. What could be, how do they fix these? Just get out of the first quarter, not, the first quarter and a half still being in the game. How do they get to that point? That's a step in the right direction. It was 23-0 yesterday.
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is. There's a very large staff to figure that out. But Florida was bad on the road even before Billy got here. I think they're like 2-15 or something, like 2-17. Florida was really bad on the road against Power 5 teams in like the Dan Mullen's last tenure. So like they've been bad. This isn't just a Billy Napier thing, but you have to figure it out. I mean, you can't. Florida was 1-3 in true road games last year, 0-2 in neutral site games, and now 0-2 away from home in the Swamp. The only game you won on the road was against a 5-win Texas A&M team who had 30 guys out with the flu. Until further notice, I don't know if I'll pick Florida to win road games, but you have to practice these things, and I think Billy Napier does, and coaches do. They practice. In camp, you're staying in a hotel. You're not in your place, and you're being bussed, and you get bussed, and they run a whole thing. You get bussed to the airport, and you load a plane, and you go through all the motions to get used to these things. Florida, for whatever reason, is just a completely different football team when they're not playing at the Swamp.
Nick, I'm looking at, and again, I'm Keith Niebuhr, Gators Online, joined by Nick Torre. We're just going to go for another 5 to 10 minutes. Nick's got to catch a flight here. I'm looking at some Vanderbilt statistics. And by the way, we had people mentioning yesterday, Nick, God, I can't believe Vanderbilt is now our measuring stick game, our must-win game. That's
It's not.
shocking. I know, but that's a little shocking to people that it's a big game. That if you used to not be too worried about this one, at least at home. Now, Vanderbilt's always a concern when you play in there late in the year, but Vanderbilt has not played that great of a schedule. I think Hawaii earlier, Alabama A&M, and now 4 straight losses. Wake Forest by 16 on the road, UNLV on the road. By the way, how does your athletic director, how's an SEC team playing at UNLV on the road? I mean, somebody on the staff got points at the Mirage. What's going on here?
Yeah.
All right. Kentucky, they lost by 17 in Nashville. Well, gosh, they just beat Florida by 19 in Lexington. And then they just lost to Missouri at home by 17. This is not a great team. 371 yards a game, throwing for 274 yards a game, 97 yards on the ground. Vanderbilt, again, allowing 408 yards a game. So they're giving up 30 more yards a game than they produce. Florida, 392 yards of offense a game, allowing only 275. But again, yesterday was a little bit of an eye-opener. Florida went into that game, Nick, with the number 1 defense in the SEC and had played 2 pretty good teams, although Utah's offense is not good. But 244 yards a game, which was number 1 in the SEC, number 5 overall in the country. And Florida gave up right at 400 yards yesterday. Florida now allows 275.6 yards a game, still 131 on the ground even after yesterday. Vanderbilt's not a great running team, Nick, 97 yards a game. A.J. Swan, the quarterback, I think he threw 3 interceptions yesterday. So they're pretty one-dimensional. That should play into Florida's hands, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I think Florida should be able just to run the ball on Vanderbilt. This shouldn't be, Zach called it a must-win game. I think it's a must-not-lose game. It's not a must-win game. Beating Vanderbilt is not going to fix your problems. Beating Vanderbilt is not going to make fans who are pissed off about the way Florida has played the last 2 weeks make them feel any better. Nothing you do against Vanderbilt will make me think, okay, they've fixed it. It's fixed now. Going forward, those problems are no longer problems. Nothing you do against Vanderbilt will make anybody feel that things are permanently fixed. So you just have to play a good game, play a sound game, get out of there with a win. Everyone, in my opinion, this is not a Vanderbilt team that you lose to. And if Florida loses Saturday, I don't know what you're selling as a football coach or as a program anymore at this point.
I don't even want to think about that. Nick, I got a question for you. People always say, you get this all the time. I don't have to deal with it. I'm just dealing with recruits, right? I get all the easy stuff. Hey, when are you guys going to ask some tough questions? Nick, get off your ass. Ask some tough questions. That's what people say. So you get Billy Napier, I guess, once or twice this week. What's a question that you want to have? I hope this doesn't give away something that you plan on writing or anything like that, but what you feel comfortable sharing with us. What's something you're going to ask that you want to know? You want to know from Billy Napier right now about him and his team 3-2.
One that I said earlier, I want to know does Graham Mertz have the ability to make checks and change plays audible at the line of scrimmage?
Okay, you mentioned that. That's right.
I want to know, going back and looking at it on tape, was your game plan, looking back and how it played out, hindsight's 2020, was your game plan ever going to work? Don't know how to ask that. Probably don't ask that directly. I want to know, will you consider coaching changes in season, after season? When you go back and evaluate, he says everyone is asked to evaluate themselves and then they go over it one-on-one, Billy and the coaches. When is that process? And when you had it last year, the deficiencies that were last year, and when you were told Coach A, Coach B, Coach C, this is what we need to work on, has there been progress? And do you have those conversations mid-season, during the bye week? Do you have them at the off season? And then the other one, what is going on with your team on the road? What is the coaching staff doing to prepare the guys, and what will be different because whatever has been done is not effective.
All right, Nick, I'm going to put you on the spot, and then we're going to get going again. I'm Keith Niebuhr, Gators Online. Nick Torre, Gators Online. Hit the like button. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. People seem to like that we're giving them a lot of content these days. We wish it was under better circumstances, obviously. And leave a comment as well. We appreciate all the support. And also right now, Gators Online is $1 for 1 month. I'm going to promo that a little bit later here. Everybody will probably click off before I get to that part, Nick. But all right, you said earlier – before you when you were bragging about your 5-0 start with whatever, I mean, I get all your bragging kind of mixed up into one bag here, but you mentioned 7-5. You predicted that, I think, in June. Right now, put the screws to you here. They finished with the winning record.
Yes.
Florida, okay.
Well, they will finish at least 500 before a bowl game. Like 6 and 7 could easily happen. I think Florida, there's still a path to 7-5. I think I just kind of this is kind of what I expected Florida to be. So I'm not I understand why fans are angry. I don't share that same anger because I just expected Florida to be this. I thought Florida was a 6-6 football team, a 7-5 football team. If something crazy, if you beat Utah, maybe you sneak 8 wins. But this is what Florida is and where they are right now. I think Florida fans got the roller coaster that we've been on, Keith. I picked Florida to beat Tennessee because I thought Tennessee stunk. I thought they were overrated, and I thought Joe Milton was being talked about as a Heisman dark horse, and that's not who he is. I've covered him and known him since he was 15, 16 years old as a recruit. And because that little number 11 was next to Tennessee, I think fans were like, we're back. Who's Georgia? It's our division. And I'm like, Tennessee's just not good. Florida is, as built right now, a team that can beat, I think, everyone on their schedule outside of Georgia, but could also lose to everyone on their schedule. The team that came out and played against Charlotte, if Florida doesn't bring its B game, could lose to Charlotte. If Florida doesn't bring its A game every week, they could lose and get blown out on the road at LSU. They could lose at home to Arkansas. There's just a very thin, slim margin of error. And when Florida doesn't come to play and doesn't play its best brand of football, they're not going to win football games. And that's just where the program is right now. I don't say that as an indictment on Billy Napier moving forward. I am nowhere near the fire Billy Napier train that we're seeing after some of these games. I think they need time to get their guys in and also to learn how to win. They just don't know how to win, how to handle adversity, especially on the road.
Well, I think the question is, I think we all look at the roster and say, okay, it's not an 11-win roster.
No.
But is it a roster that should be continually making the same mistakes over and over on the road? There's things that there's good excuses and excuses that don't hold much water. I think that's what fans are thinking right now. All right, last question with Nick Torre. He's got to catch a flight here. Actually, he's probably got to go get a couple of cocktails in him before he catches that flight. But Nick, is there anything look, we expect them to beat Vanderbilt. Like you said, you made a great point. It's not a must win. It's a must don't lose. But is there anything they can do this weekend that you need to see, that you want to see? And I ask the fans the same question that's on our message board that would kind of make you think, okay, now things are starting to come together. Or is it because they just play so much differently at home and the opponent's an inferior opponent? Yeah. There really isn't much they can do that's going to shake. Now, McNeese State, they ran the ball well. We didn't know what to make of it, but then they ran the ball well the next week against Tennessee. So I don't know. Is there anything at all they can do? Maybe it's as something as, hey, how about a game with less than X amount of penalties, or a game that's a clean special teams game? Just something that gives you, okay, they look like they are mentally prepared now to take that next step at South Carolina the following week.
Yeah, they I guess let's have a game with three penalties or less. A game where every special teams play has 11 guys on the field. You're not leaping over the long snapper. You don't have a catastrophic happenstance on special teams, but there's nothing I'm hanging my hat on this week. It's almost like a lose-lose situation for Florida. Like, even if you beat Vanderbilt in the way that you should beat Vanderbilt, I don't think anyone looks at that and says, like, okay, it's fixed. It's fixed. Definitely going to crush South Carolina on the road next week. So you have to go out, treat Vanderbilt like a real opponent. It's a conference game. You have to take them seriously. You have to have a good week of practice. You have to go out and execute on Saturday and beat Vanderbilt the way you're supposed to beat Vanderbilt. But I'm not going to hang my hat on anything. I don't think we're going to learn anything or any of the underlying problems that have been around for 5 games this year, 10 games dating back to last year, all 18 games. Florida's 9-9 under this coaching staff. So I don't think we're going to learn anything or come away with a conclusion that this is fixed based on what you do against Vanderbilt.
Okay. All right. Interesting stuff. Good job as always, Nick. I appreciate you stopping by. Nick's at the airport in Cincinnati. He's going to be flying back to Florida this evening. We appreciate all of you for listening, watching, checking out our YouTube channel. One more time, like it, subscribe, tell somebody about it. It's free content. We're doing it because we want people to know what we do, know who we are, and then come check out our site, by the way, which is gatorsonline.com. $1 gets you in the door. $1 for 1 month right now. The best team insight, the best team intel, the best recruiting coverage from A to Z, and a growing community, a great community. In fact, it's fun to be on. It was a good place to kind of cry with your friends yesterday, quite frankly, Nick. And sometimes that's what you need, a shoulder to cry on after some of these things. And for the old time Gators, boy, they've seen it all, man. The Florida lost when they were kids, got good, and then not where it used to be. So they've seen everything. To the younger people out there, this is probably a little when's our turn coming? That kind of thing. But troubling loss for Florida. We'll see if they can pick it up. We'll see if they can pick up the pieces, pull it together, beat Vanderbilt this next week, which they should, and then go on the road and do something in Columbia, South Carolina to give people some positive reinforcement that things are heading in the right direction. But anyway, we appreciate everybody stopping by. For Nick Torre, I'm Keith Niebuhr of Gators Online. Take care, everybody.